13 Steps Down, Part 4, The Hollow House. The fog lay thick across the valley floor, the kind that turned distance into blankness and muffled every sound. Rowan had been walking since before dawn, following a faint trail that had dissolved hours ago. His map was useless now, the paper soft from moisture, edges curled. When he reached the clearing, he almost didn't see the house at all. It emerged as shape before detail, a suggestion of angles where there should have been only trees. The structure leaned slightly to one side, its paint long since gone, its roof bowed in the center, yet even from afar it seemed intact, too intact. He stopped at the tree line, hand on a trunk slick with moss. The silence was total. No insects, no wind, not even the faint hum of his own breath. Then, somewhere beneath it all came the quietest sound, a single drip, water maybe, or something else. Rowan adjusted the strap of his pack and stepped into the clearing. Each movement seemed to disturb the air around him, not in sound, but in weight. The grass bent beneath his boots, and he felt it resist, as though the earth were reluctant to let him pass. The house waited ahead, 2 stories of weathered wood and blackened windows. The porch sagged but held. Its boards were dark with old rain. When he touched the railing, it was warm. He frowned, withdrew his hand. The air itself was cold, but the wood carried a pulse, faint, steady. He tried the front door. It opened without sound. Inside, light drifted in broken shafts through the windows. Dust hung in the air, moving in patterns too slow to be natural, as though stirred by breath instead of air. Rowan called out once. "Hello?" Then again. His voice didn't echo. It stopped a few feet away, absorbed into the stillness. He stepped further in. The smell was strange. Not rot, not mold, but old wood and something sweet, faintly metallic, like a coin held too long in the palm. A table stood near the far wall. On it sat a brass lantern. The glass was clouded, the wick blackened, but the handle shone faintly in the pale light. He lifted it. The weight felt right in his hand, balanced. Something about it made him pause, a sense of recognition he couldn't name. He shook it off, checked inside. Oil, enough for hours. When he struck a match, the flame took instantly. The light spread outward in slow ripples, the walls seeming to bend with it. The hum began then, soft at first, like a vibration in the air, not sound but presence. He thought it might be the wind, but there was no wind. He lifted the lantern higher, moving toward the next room. The floorboards beneath his feet groaned, low and deep, not random, rhythmic. 13 times he heard it before it stopped. He froze, listening. Silence returned, thick and unbroken. He took another step. The sound did not repeat. Ahead, a doorway opened into a narrow hall. The wallpaper had peeled away, leaving long scars in the plaster. A mirror hung crooked on one wall, its surface darkened with dust. He wiped it with his sleeve and stared at his reflection. For a second, there were 2 of him. He blinked, stepped back. The second image lingered an instant longer, then dissolved. He exhaled slowly, almost laughing. "Get a grip." His voice fell flat, swallowed by the air. At the end of the hall, a door waited. It looked newer than the rest, its handle clean and bright, brass uncorroded. Rowan reached for it. The hum stopped. He hesitated, hand inches from the knob. The silence pressed harder, dense enough that his ears rang. He turned it. The door opened. A staircase descended into blackness. He stood at the top of the stairs, the lantern's light spilling down only far enough to reveal the first few steps. The air that rose from below was colder than outside, wet and still, smelling faintly of stone. He waited for the hum to start again. It didn't. Only his heartbeat filled the space, loud enough that he felt it in his fingertips. Rowan lifted the lantern higher. The light trembled, painting the boards in soft gold. The steps were worn smooth, edges rounded from years of use. 13 of them, he thought without knowing how he knew. He whispered into the dark, "Anyone down there?" The words sank. There was no echo, only the slow return of that low vibration, faint but certain. It wasn't in the air this time. It was in the wood. He set one foot on the first step. The plank gave a soft sigh, a note that held steady until he moved again. The sound matched his pulse. Another step and another, the lantern's light sliding along the railing. Moisture gleamed on the grain. Halfway down, he stopped. A murmur rose from the deep, just on the edge of hearing. Two tones braided together, one light, one lower, moving in the same rhythm. It might have been wind in a narrow shaft. It might have been voices. He took another step. The whisper became clearer, resolving into syllables that almost formed his name. At the ninth step, the air warmed. The fog from outside seemed to have followed him in, coiling along the walls. He brushed it with his free hand. It moved like breath. He counted softly. 10, 11, 12. The 13th step waited below, darker, slick with sheen. The hum swelled. He could hear them now, distinctly. A woman's tone first, gentle as someone coaxing a child awake, and beneath it, a man's voice, steadier, patient. Closer, they said together. Rowan froze. The lantern shook in his hand, light darting across the boards. He should have turned, but the air behind him had thickened, pressing him forward. He lifted one foot, held it above the 13th step. The voices breathed again, closer still. There's one more. He stared into the dark. Something below was changing. A faint glow gathered under his boots, not from the lantern, but from the wood itself. The boards flexed once, twice. Then a new shape rose out of the black, a step forming where there had been none. The 14th. The light from his lantern bent toward it, drawn downward. The voices overlapped completely now, one sound with two timbres. You found us. You're home. The house seemed to lean inward at the words, beams settling, walls exhaling. Rowan felt warmth spread through the rail beneath his hand, a pulse that met his own and steadied it. The air smelled of rain and cedar, of earth after a storm. He nodded once, though no one could see him, and stepped forward. The lantern slipped from his grasp, spinning once before resting upright on the 13th step. The flame stayed lit, trembling. The light caught the edges of the new board just long enough for him to see it gleam, fresh, smooth, alive. The hum deepened into a single drawn-out sigh that filled the stairwell and then the whole house. Dust lifted from the floorboards above, settled again. Outside, the fog pressed against the windows, whitening them completely. When the sound faded, there was only stillness. And from somewhere beneath the floor came the quiet, patient sound of counting. 1, 2, 3. And we find ourselves at the end of 13 steps. I hope you enjoyed. Please remember to like, share, comment, and subscribe. And as always, have a wonderful day.